Okay, I've jumped ahead a little. As you can see, the line weight is in, as well as the eyebrow and some preliminary shading. For this exercise, I'd like you to pause the video and try doing this much of your drawing without my assistance. If you're not sure where to begin, refer to your checklist. Begin by managing the line weight, then put in some basic shading starting with the eyebrow, then build up your shading to about the mid-tone stage, and then once you've gotten that far, start the video and let's pick it up from here. The purpose of this exercise is to help you find out what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are. The only way to find that out is take the training wheels off. This way, you know what to focus on during the next lesson on the final set of eyes we do together. Continue hatching in the values around the eye. I'm using a 2B, but you could easily be using a B-lead for these areas because they're so light. Make sure the shading in your eyebrow captures where the highlight in the hair is. As you can see, I've made this area darker and this area lighter in mine. We're moving to the white part of the eye next, so switch to an H-lead. This highlight is great because you can really see the difference between what's truly first value against the rest of the eye, which to the untrained eye looks white, but you now know is clearly second value. Just lightly outline the highlight so you don't shade over it. And just lightly hatch around it. Look how quickly that highlight starts to stand out. That's all it takes to make the eyeball look wet, and that's how you control texture. At this point in the course, you should be comfortable enough with shading to take on a more advanced frame of mind. So not just shading the values you see, but thinking about and recognizing what's creating each highlight and shadow. For example, this dark spot is actually the cast shadow from the eyelashes. Visualizing that depth instead of just shading another value is what's going to bring your technique to the next level. So don't just shade the area in as one value. Crosshatch in each eyelash's drop shadow individually. Training your eye to see detail and knowing how to approach it is going to give your drawings an even more realistic quality. I know you don't even know where the eyelashes are yet, but keep count and trust that they'll all line up later. Notice how this eyelash shadow falls on the lower lip of the eyelid and changes direction. Be sure to get that in. That's an important little detail because it helps create the illusion of shape and structure. Next, shade in a value for the plane of the lip of the eyelid. It should be a shade lighter than the drop shadow you just put in from the eyelash. This lesson is all about detail and visualization. Now take a moment to visualize the way the shading on the folded skin of the eyelid should work. There should be a hard line on the bottom because the skin folds above the eye, and there should be a short gradient up from there because this area is rounded. It's a subtle gradient, so put it in with your H-lead. And this area above the eye should be a value darker. Doing that will make the values in the white part of the eyeball look even lighter and really make the highlight pop out even more. The shading on the side of the nose is barely second value, but still important. You need that contrast to create these two highlights. Without those two light features, the whole area would look flat. I'm moving to the area under the eye now. Don't let it intimidate you. Start by looking for this flow and put in a light value. To simplify it even more, you can just shade right over the highlight. You can always extract the highlight later using your sharpened eraser. I'll build this shadow up last. I want to get the overall value of the area in first. Okay, this is another good example of shadow detail. These shadows are being cast by the lower eyelashes. They're almost more dominant than the eyelashes themselves. Remember to treat each one as an individual shadow and hatch them in one at a time. And be sure to get this subtle value change in the corner of the eye. I'm going to begin building up the darker area under the eye next. I've chosen to use an H-lead even though it's well within the value range of the B-lead because it's a girl's eye. When it comes to drawing women, it's common to reduce the shadows under the eyes by a value or two, as well as wrinkles and excessive smile lines if your goal is to make them look beautiful. Of course, that's not a rule. Sometimes you want to keep those characteristics. That's up to you. For men, it's just the opposite. I'm well aware of the double standard here, but putting in wrinkles, laugh lines, and dimples makes a drawing of a guy look like he has character. The rules for kids are the same as women. It helps to omit information to make them look youthful. I'm just noticing that the value under the iris can be a bit darker. Next, I'm going to put in the tiny lower eyelash hairs. Do your best to line them up with their cast shadows. I'm going to switch to a B-lead to make some minor adjustments, like this little shadow under the eyelash and darkening a few of the gradients on the upper eyelid. And I'm going to bring the value under the eye back up to its correct darkness now, just to keep the purists happy. I'm switching back to an H-lead to even out the values a little more and work on blending out the vignette. I'm just adding a little shading here, not eyebrow hairs. Make sure to cross-hatch the area so the lines you put down aren't mistaken for hairs. I think this line under the eye could be more pronounced, and the lip of the eyelid could come up about a value. It's important to get this value right because it causes a sort of chain reaction of values to look more dynamic. By darkening the lip of the eyelid, it makes the white of the eyeball seem lighter, and that makes the highlight pop more. Next, using your sharpened eraser, erase a thin line to create this highlight. Then go back into the other highlights and clean them up so that they're as bright as possible. And bonus points if you could get these tiny highlights in the corner of the eye. If you have trouble getting a spot that small, just erase, then go back in with your H-lead and reapply the shading around the highlight. I can see this shadow needs to be transitioned more smoothly with a darker lead, so I'll switch to a B to manage it. Notice how this line continues from the eyelid right through the eyebrow. That's that flow I keep talking about. Use it to confirm that all the features in your drawing are lining up and in harmony. If you continue it, it should flow right into the eyebrow and then back into the curve of the eyelash perfectly. I'm going to talk more about this in the next lesson. That coil the line makes is called a Fibonacci sequence. It's sacred math, like a snail shell. It's a perfect mathematical flow found in nature. I'm just putting in some stray hairs around the eyebrow to taper it out some more. I'm using a B-lead because it makes fine lines and these outer hairs don't have to be as dark.